Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's PropMoto webinar. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I am Franco. I'm the editor and co-founder of PropMoto, and I will be the host for the webinar. Really excited about this one. We're talking about the kind of convergence of residential and commercial real estate, also known as mixed use. I think it's kind of interesting that this is a new concept for a lot of American cities because it is the original way that people lived. And we will talk about how it's coming back, right? How it's becoming much more popular now, and how it really does change the needs of the management team, and hopefully how it can create somewhat of a virtuous cycle, right? Where people want to live in the area because of the retail, or want to come to work, or live close, right? That live work play concept that everybody strives to achieve, and some are able to. I know not all of the developments are created equally in that sense. Just a reminder, this is a live webinar, so anything can happen. We will also be taking questions live. We're not going to wait till the end. We would love if you do have any questions or comments to go ahead and throw them here in the Q&A. We'd love to hear from you, and if they're pertinent, we will get to them right as we're talking. So thank you everyone for joining, and let's go ahead and get started. I want to introduce my two esteemed panelists. First, I have Haniel Lin. He is CEO of Castle. Hi, Haniel.
Hi.
Thanks
Great
for
to be
joining.
here. Thanks for having me.
Next, we have Sean McNamara. He is Managing Director of Mixed Use Property Management at a little company called JLL. Hi, Sean.
Hey, thank you, Frank. I appreciate you having me.
Well, I always like to start these out with just a little bit of a state of the market, right? A lot has been going on in the, real estate space and the economy in general, right? And I think that is influencing everything that has to do with real estate, but particularly this kind of a demand for every facet of a mixed use development. So, I kind of want to just start, looking about what's happening with demand for these, right? As more and more cities look to develop mixed use, because that is a huge component to, I think, the densification that cities are looking for. What does that demand look like? And, let's obviously break it down a little bit by, by the multifamily component, the retail component, and the office component. Sean, I'd love to kind of hear from you to start this one off.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And just from a macroeconomic sense, I mean, these make a lot of sense where they're trying to emulate a destination market or some of these districts that have been formulated, because mixed use, I think it's got appeal to both the work, live, play occupier, the people who reside there, whether you're multifamily, office, the retailers, even from the standpoint of hotel, I think there's some real attractiveness. And then from an investment standpoint, I think what this does, is it creates this diversified blend of really durable cash flow, and it's a hedge against a lot of what I would consider, risk in any asset class downturn or inflation, because with the different mixes and uses here, you can reset on some of these. Some of them are longer term, some of them are shorter term from a rental rate perspective. So I think there's a lot of appeal for both the end user occupier and for the investor.
Sure. I know one of the big problems that a lot of real estate managers are experiencing is prices are going up, right? Rent growth has stalled a little bit. So I know a lot of it's about doing more with less, right? Preserving some cash flow. These are often pretty expensive property types to manage. Haniel, maybe you can talk to me about how some of your clients have tried to preserve some of this cash flow in what are somewhat lean times right now.
Yeah, sure. Glad to go into that. Maybe I'd take one step back first, just as we think about the demand cycle on this thing. We track a lot of data in our company. I'm sure the audience probably sees the data that we're tracking. And so there certainly is an economic backdrop that overlays on what's going on in the world, which we're watching, plussing and minusing. But so much of, I think, recent demand, especially in these kinds of environments, are driven as much by what we're seeing in the hybrid remote work kind of environment, and how residents and tenants are using space differently than they might have used in a couple of years past, which I think ends up being reflected in the kinds of developments that are going up, which Sean will know a lot more than I will for sure. But in the way that we end up having conversations with our clients, it really is about creating the spaces that reflect the needs and demands and the use cases of the environment and the economic backdrop of the work-life backdrop that informs the environment today. And so some of the data, of course, that folks have probably tracked on this Castle Back to Work Barometer, we've been tracking this since the beginning of the pandemic, and we're looking at something like 50% or something, 50 to 60% of the people back relative to the peak back in 2020 of how much people are back into the office, which of course has a demand now cycle for how much space is needed. It also says that if people are more at home than they are in the office, what kind of amenities, what kind of situation are you creating there for the home life or the multifamily or the apartment life to compensate for the days when they are home instead of being in the office, right? So those are some of the kind of demand characteristics. And then as the demand profile has changed, as you said, that will get our clients to think differently about how they should operate more effectively and more efficiently given that environment. So how do they think about using technology, which of course is a big part of the part of our company? How do you use technology to make them better at what they do, to save them money in the way that they operate, to create more and better tenant experiences? Because also part of the data that we found is that there is a real flight to quality, so that the better properties are performing better, have more people back to the office than the average property might. So what kinds of amenities, what kinds of experiences are you investing in order to attract more tenants, attract better tenants, better residents? All of that comes into play in this kind of environment today.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that, office was always kind of the most durable part of these mixed use developments. Like, they could kind of stake their, we know we're going to make some money from the office, and then, the retail and the housing will come. And now I think it's become more of a question mark. I know that we've talked about it forever, but the flight to quality now seems like maybe more important than ever. But what quality is, I think, is maybe a little different than maybe we thought about it before the pandemic, right? It's not marble lobbies and all of these kind of amenities. Some of it is kind of access to other things around the office. Maybe Sean, can you talk to me a little bit about what are some of the benefits of having an office in a mixed use development, and does that actually translate to quality as far as the tenant sees it?
Yeah, a great question. As Haniel was going on, I almost said if he wasn't comfortable at Castle, he wants to come over to the mixed use side of JLL. He said a lot of
Dark side.
Perfectly, and it's really about, I think, within the mixed use environment, it's about curating experience, and that starts also a little bit with it, because you have this element with the office. If it's a standalone office, even if it's flight to quality, it doesn't enjoy the same level of, I think, attractiveness from a tenant, even from a rental rate perspective, as an office that sits in a mixed use environment, because you do have this neighborhood merchandising that happens around the retail, and that's why it's so important to get that right as well, because a lot of the retail can be the front door and the thing and creates the placemaking and activation opportunities that make especially horizontal mixed use very special. At JLL, we've tried to take, look, we've been talking work live play for a long time, Franco, but I think one of the things at JLL that we tried to do is take what is somewhat from an operating standpoint, an esoteric product type. How do you from at JLL, we've spent 12 months rolling a rock uphill to get to what I manage now, which is called the Mix, and be able to unlock the intrinsic value for our investors and create special experiences for the end occupier at these mixed use projects. So like office and specifically, whereas before you curated a tenant relations program within the footprint of the brick and mortar. What you have now is you have that same experience expanding outside the brick and mortar, but still on the project, and you can affect what happens in the office by what happens in the rest of the project, not only for the office occupier, but for the multifamily, for if you have a hotel component, for anything else that exists, and even for the retailers. They want to be there because this is the type of environment where they're extremely, especially if you get the merchandising and the co-tenancy right, they become extremely successful. So this is leaps and bounds above where we were as individual asset classes. In fact, even with flight to quality, it's been proven out in research. You get a 7% rental premium on both office and multifamily if you activate and place make and do all those other things and really operate the mixed use in a manner that gives you highest and best results. So I think you see that into market. There's to the rest of the market that's not flight to quality, 62% in multifamily, 37% in office, and 52% retail from a rental premium. I mean, that's a pretty big spread over traditional any of those asset classes as a standalone.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense. We talk about the, occupiers, corporate occupiers wanting to compete with home, right? Getting people to come into the office. And, you can do quite a bit at home. You can have a home gym, all of these amenities, but having it, what happens outside of the office, the things that are going on, the energy, the retail, I think is something that you really can't, you can't replicate at home. And I think it does make people want to come to the office more.
Yeah, so I love that because I'm sorry. So
no, go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
Oh no, I was just going to put in air quotes because it's the term we use here, commute worthy. You've got to get them there. And once they're there, you want to curate a day in the life. What makes it special? So I think that's where our challenge is as a third party real estate company is trying to figure that out for our landlord and our investor clients that build mixed use. They build exceptional brick and mortar. How do we as a service company align ourselves with that build and create something that makes it special? So.
Yeah, what I was going to say is I love that and Franco, your idea of like, what does flight to quality mean? How do you dimensionalize quality now? And it might be that in the past we said quality was defined within the four walls of an office building, and now you've opened that up, the dimensions of how you can shape quality about attracting people to commute or whatever to get there, not only because of what's inside the four walls, which could be a lot, but it also is outside of it in where you can play, where you can go to dinner, where you can go shop, and all the environment that's around you. What Sean said, I love that a lot. We also spend a lot of time talking about how technology facilitates that and it creates part of the experience that would attract somebody into these spaces. That's also part of quality as well. So, but to go back to what you were saying is like the live, work, play notion of it creates, I think, a completely different now play space or a different game board for you to think about what are the strategies that you can employ.
Mm-hmm. Well, going forward, I'd like to break this up right into its individual parts. So I want to start here just talking about the housing component of this. I think it's really fascinating because, multifamily, kind of modern multifamily, generally really wants to create this neighborhood feel, right? And again, we're, same with office, with multifamily, it's what happens outside, right? The kind of everything that touches the entire experience of living there. So, how can we maybe, how can owners and operators think about designing the kind of amenities that and bringing the community together where it creates this kind of neighborhood feel? Sean, I'm sure you have some experience with this down there in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, one of our city on the hill examples of where we've done, I think a better than average job. I think we did a really good job, and we've had a great partnership with the owner of the Plaza Coral Gables, Agave, which is Big Tequila. They're the Jose Cuervo family. They built this $700 million mixed use project here in Coral Gables, Florida, which is hypersensitive to development. And I didn't think in my lifetime something like this would get built, but it has built. And a big component of it is the 270 unit luxury residential component that they built on. In fact, they built that first. And I can tell you from day one when there was still dirt around it, and as experiences and retail and the neighborhood started to come alive, and we started to, finish the plane while we were still flying it. As we started adding components, we created this what I said earlier, this day in the life experience that if you are a residential, occupier within what we call the reserve here, when you step out of your front door, there's a clubhouse, there's a pool, there's an amenity, everything you'd find in a standalone multifamily asset. But as you go beyond the walls of that and you get down, you enter into, this 8-acre paseo with all these green spaces with activations going on, curated art throughout the project. You get a sense of I've just created, and we go a long way of trying to figure out how to bring the neighborhood so that the office people are interacting with the multifamily and the retailers are getting into the multifamily community and creating a sense of this is my neighborhood. I mean, Coral Gables is, a beautiful place to live. It's long been the C-suite location of choice. It was never an office or any other commercial real estate market, but this project, as generational, as transformational as it's been, if you live, work, and play on this environment, you get that sense of there's a community here. In fact, people have just dropped the Plaza Coral Gables and just call it the Plaza. It's become a signature place to meet, to collaborate, share ideas. And if you live here from a multi kind of perspective, I would want to be the leasing agent that's leasing this up, because the storytelling you get around, trying to describe where you live now and why it's special is incredible. And I think they have such storytelling, and I think it helps them. And it's one of the reasons why, even in a declining rental rate market, we have a waiting list for this multifamily housing, and it's got an 8% rental growth over time while the market was declining. I think that speaks volumes about how, if you can create cohesion across the larger project, and it inures to the benefit of the multifamily and every other vertical within the project, you get something special that everybody wants. And they'll, just like flight to quality, they'll flight to exceptional experience too.
Mhm. I think we also realized that, when it comes to housing, not everybody wants the same thing. I think more and more we start to see these, multifamily buildings that have a pretty obvious target market, right? Who they're trying to, appeal to, both with the look and feel, but also, the programming, the events, the amenities. Let's talk about how, owners and operators can maybe better understand their residents. That's something I think is fascinating about these, is it actually opens up to a lot more data, that you can kind of understand exactly who these people are, when they come and go, and what they might want, right? What would be the kind of really impactful things that you could add to the property to keep that hopeful rental growth. So Haniel, I know you guys track a lot of this data. Talk to me about how you can do this.
Yeah, for sure. And we do. I think the cool things that Sean said, there are many cool things, but a couple of the cool words that I picked up on, the curation part and then the storytelling part that allowed you, I think you said, this is my neighborhood. And embedded in that is the my word, because you can't curate without knowing something about somebody. You can't storytell in a way that connects to them personally unless you know something about that person. And so as we think about that sense of community that you're building in the neighborhood, a community doesn't exist, clinically or artificially. It exists because of the thoughtfulness that one puts behind the design. And then the more that you know about the people and then the way that they consume or use that space, the more you are informed to make that community even grow stronger together. And so as we have talked to a lot of our clients about this, understanding the individual in that, or the identity of that person, and that is really important from a data standpoint. So if it happens that Sean is going from one place to another place to another place, or Haniel is going from a place to another place, you need to be able to know that it's the same Sean that opened an apartment door that also happened to be working in that particular office building, that might also be shopping at the grocery store in that complex, right? And so how might you start thinking about the design of a data program or a loyalty program that allows you to capture that kind of information? Because the more you know, the more you can do with that. And then to be able to create the community feel around that, to be able to span locations or span the community for you to do something that's really cool. And certainly a big part of enabling all of that stuff to happen now is the phone, the mobile phone. Right? Before, when you were carrying everything as a plastic badge or a plastic fob or whatever, you don't have the same kind of ubiquity that you have now with the phone that is going to work everywhere. And then you're going to Apple Pay something, or you're going to open your door or something, or it's the phone that's with you all the time. And that becomes a fantastic data collection device. And that data collection device, again, as long as you can understand it's that Franco all the way through opportunity, and then to be able to distill from that data, what are they doing? Then you can start to curate and storytell in ways that I don't think you could have done ever before.
Yeah,
That,
yeah, absolutely.
oh,
Go on, Sean.
I was just gonna pull on that thread. Those are pearls right there. Pearls. I mean, what Haniel just said is the only way you get from a programming mindset to something very special. That data capture that you get that informs event programming, placemaking, even the merchandising of your retail within these projects. Without it, you don't really have a strategy for creating a successful community and creating the storytelling that I was talking about before. And he picked up on that, and this technology push that we have, and using words like bleeding edge, and he mentioned this being and how ubiquitous this has become in our lifestyle, and how you used to lose your wallet and you lose your mind. Now you lose this. And even though everything's in the cloud, it's like, what do I do without my smartphone? And we've created, both functional and experience within the smartphone to help us, to deploy mixed use magic within the walls and outside the walls of mixed use on a project. And it all starts with data collection that then that now reinforms. We know when something's working, when it's not working. If we hold an event, or if we have certain tenants, and what that does is it makes us informed around which retailer should I be putting in here based on the neighborhood that I'll be drawing from, and the bodies that'll be here. How do I get retailers in here? Because then what happens is you get retailers in here that you can't get necessarily anywhere else, that create, and then they become successful because they're in a place where you've already done the research for them. And then we have a fantastic boutique leasing team that every time they pick up the phone and call, like an Alo or one of these big, or Nike or somebody, and they want to be in this project, they pick up the phone because we put them in several other projects where they've been uber successful because we've done that data grab and the research for them in advance, and they know that when they come in here they're going to be successful. And then what that does is it then reinforces, if I live in this community, this is exactly what they have all my stores. I mean, I tell the day in the life thing where I went the other day and I got a haircut at Man Cave. Well, less of it to cut these days than there was before, but a haircut at Man Cave. I went in. I'd never gotten a facial before. I went into Silver Mirror. I'm just walking along the Paseo here at the Plaza Coral Gables. And then I dropped down to the second level, took my management team to lunch, and just that special experience that happens because somebody thoughtfully curated, like someone like Sean, he's our target. He's our demographic. He's going to want to do that. He works here. He'll want to use these services because we've already done that research. Well, it creates the storytelling, and it creates the special neighborhood merchandising that becomes the larger amenity base for all of these other things and makes a project successful.
What do you think, Sean, about, obviously the kind of resident experience apps are, became really popular. I've heard that sometimes it's hard to get, some residents to adopt it, but they do provide a much deeper data set too, that you can add to stuff like, when people came and went and all of that. Is that also kind of folded into this when it comes to decision making?
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up, because I think what we call in the CRE world prop tech, and that's a kind of industry term for the things that we use to deploy. It's the technology we use to deploy either experience or functionality. And what I've learned, at least through not just my own epigenosis through a mixed use journey over the last 10 years, is that you got to get people to adopt those experience apps and bring them onto their suite of apps that they use every day. And one of the ways you do that is and Haniel can speak to this too, is you tie it to something like their access control, parking or building, either one, or their CMMS system, which allows them to open work orders. You create the functional side of that first, to where they need it to adopt it to navigate throughout the project. And then what you do is you earn the right, once you have them on that, to start the experience side of that, where you're connecting it to the POS systems of the retailers, and they're getting pushed their favorite details. And the retailers love it because you're driving demand to their front door. This is highest and best now. You're driving demand to their front door, but then the end users that live in the community are getting the things they love at a discount, and they can go there and they can shop, and they can enjoy everything they enjoy. And it's such a huge value proposition by using the technology to book in that. And that prop tech is extremely important to us because it is the enabler of all the great experience.
Yeah, I mean, people don't love downloading new apps, but I'm sure, Haniel, maybe you can give me some color on this, but I'm sure once you show people that they can easily get in and out of all of their spaces, right? That is kind of a functionality part of it that probably brings a lot of adoption onto these apps.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a lot of experience with different clients and putting amenity apps into their spaces. Access is for sure the gateway drug that gets them into it. It is that. And people think about like, what's the thing that I use every day? Because if I have this, then I'm going to now have this other thing. And then once they start experiencing the other thing, they'll find value into it for sure. I think the thing that we find as you look using access and mobile across a number of different spaces is there is some friction because there's so many different access control systems that are out there. So you can't easily just go from your office, let's say, to your home or to the gym or something using the same badge or the same fob because all of the systems technically operate on different platforms
Yeah.
and they're not connected together. And so you manufacturers are doing different things and then integrations don't work. And so you don't know that it's actually Haniel going all the way through back to this identity comment I was making before, but it's, some badge 1 over here, badge 3 over there, and badge 150 over there. And those are all just badge defined people rather than people defined identities or credentials. And so we spend a lot of time working with our clients about how to make that go so that access control becomes more frictionless. And the thing that's really cool is there's a big deal coming on the horizon of a new industry standard that's called Aliro that's going to be able to allow authorized users to use the same credential across multiple systems. And so whether you've got, a Schlage door lock or an HID or whatever, system that you're operating in some point in time, hopefully in the very near future, you're going to be able to use the same credential to get all the way through all these systems without friction. And I think once you get to that place, it is, we talk about it sometimes like it's like Wi-Fi. You go to a Wi-Fi network now and you don't have to figure out how to connect to the Wi-Fi network. It's just automatic. And so can you imagine, like, this has been holy grail for access control forever to make it so that it's interoperable. Can you imagine now you've got a not too distant future, you got a badge, you just present it, it'll work everywhere as long as you're authorized to get into that space. And once that kind of friction starts going away, then it's even going to be better for mobile adoption or for people to now have experiences that feel like great experiences rather than, oh my gosh, it doesn't work. Why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? And that just creates friction for why somebody doesn't want to adopt a phone or mobile access or something else.
That's a
Yeah,
great
and
point.
obviously these mixed use, make that even more difficult, right? You have office tenants that want to bring in their own systems, retailers have their own systems, even people want to install that, Google or Nest or any of the things that they have, right? Now you can kind of have them all work under one umbrella and really work seamlessly. I think that's
Yeah, I think that's probably from a technology standpoint, the biggest thing that we're watching right now is how all of these integrations come together. Because if you put the user at the center, which we all should, right? The user's at the center, how do you make experiences frictionless for them? It's so complicated because of all the systems now that show up. And before it used to be one system, let's say, and it's just the access control system, but now the access has to plug into the tenant experience app we were just talking about, but it also has to go and open the turnstiles, get in the elevators, and be able to order coffee. Like all these different things have to connect together somehow. But all of these on the back end are so disparate that it takes a village, but it takes a lot of effort to make it all come together. So watching how the integration game will change over the next year and years will be a really important thing to keep an eye out on.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure in a couple years time we'll all like be shocked that it was ever, disparate, right? Once it's like downloading a printer driver, like I can't believe we had to do that. Right now, you just connect and go and go about your business. But yeah, I think that the user doesn't really seem to care what the difficulty is of getting things together. They just want it to work, right?
Well, that's exactly what we deal with our clients is they don't the user has no tolerance. Like they don't understand why it doesn't. And so
Yeah.
one of the reasons why we end up, I think, doing well in our business is because we're a managed service, we take it over for our clients so that they know we can call Castle, Castle will take care of it. Whatever the integration backend is, they're going to figure it out. Versus I don't know who to quite call. Do I call
Yeah.
this person, that person, the other person? I'm not really exactly sure. Is it this problem or that problem? At the end of the day, they're all problems that show up to the user as it's a problem. I don't care.
Yeah.
Fix it.
Everybody's in fault when the
Yeah,
user has
exactly.
a
Yeah.
problem. Well, cool. I want to transition to the retail aspect of it. And, I think the kind of 1.0, right? Mixed use 1.0 was this installing some sort of retail that the office tenants and the, residential, occupants would use. But I think now we've kind of come to understand that to really have a vibrant retail, array, you also need to be able to bring people in from outside, right? You
Yeah.
need to make it a place where people actually want to go, even if they don't work there and even if they don't live there. right? So, you know, how to, you know, like obviously retailers are also becoming much more sophisticated, but how do you appeal to retailers in a way that they know, okay, you are going to have not only access to all of these people that live and work here, but also, you know, this kind of footfalls, particularly because a lot of these are new, right? You don't have maybe hard metrics yet of, oh, we know we have X amount of, you know, people coming and going every day. But to kind of give them that sense that this is going to be a destination. There are going to be people coming in and hopefully buying from your store. Sean, let's hear from you on this one.
Yeah, so thank you. And as I was listening to you thoughtfully go through the question, a couple things and just pulling on some of the stuff that Haniel said too. So retailers for a successful retailer, you got to kind of care what happens behind their four walls. You sign up a law firm for 15 years, they go bill their hours and they pay their rent, and you just expect the check. But a retailer is different. A retailer needs to be successful because an unsuccessful retailer cannot pay you rent, and it also damages that merchandising strategy that we talked about before. If you don't have successful retail and a thoughtful strategy around co-tenancy and the things they're going to be very concerned. And I've seen it go through as we are opening up the project in phases. The first retailer opens this isn't what I expected. I thought to be foot traffic everywhere. So you have to care. And look, this information grab that we've been all talking about, there's a pretty fine line between grabbing consumer preferences and being creepy. So, but there's all kinds of strategies. There's geofencing. There's things we can sniff out neighborhood beyond just the project wall. And I'm not talking about the neighborhood project, but the neighborhood at large. Like if I wanted to look at Coral Gables, I can use some sort of technology strategy with geofencing and something like Pinpoint to go out and find out what are the consumer behaviors in this area here and at large in this, maybe just all of South Florida. So that I was pulling on this thread earlier. That research we do in advance before we have a retailer come on to the merchandising strategy. We want to understand what's going to make that retailer successful, and there's some I would say table stakes that you got to have. You got to be able to have events that drive people in, and it's a 365 curated all year round. We'll have signature events. We'll have things that activate because the placemaking around these retailers, if you're not using it, if you're not unlocking the value there, you're missing everything mixed use is supposed to do. So what you do is you create. We have someone like on the project here. They're a community manager that one of their jobs is to align our overall project marketing strategy with the marketing strategy of each individual retailer to understand what they are trying to do, to then be able to inform what events and what placemaking we do there to help them and not hurt them. We don't want to cannibalize that business because we got a pretty good pun intended mix of retailers here, but you have to make them all successful. And things like dwell time, that type of retail term that we've heard, and being able to create foot traffic events that bring people to the project beyond the people living, officing, and hoteling within the brick and mortar here. And I'm speaking specifically about the plaza. We have 40% more foot traffic than the day that we open because we've created a sense of place, we've created the storytelling, and we have looked at behaviors and even changed behaviors. Like if we open a retail store that we know the rest of these people are driving to Bell Harbor to go, but we now put it in Coral Gables, well, now we just want a customer that now comes here instead of driving 40 minutes over to the beach. So, I mean, those types of strategies and the technology that we have today help inform how to make retailers very successful and happy, which in turn makes the project successful and pushes the premiums in the other verticals.
What's interesting, I always I forget what's in my background all the time. So this is the wharf here in DC. So this is a fantastic,
great example.
It's an amazing development. But to what Sean is saying, it's a destination. People go there. You happen to work there, you happen to live there, but people go there and it's packed all the time. So huge credit to the Hoffman, but they did a great job thinking about this whole design of whatever this space is. And the appeal of it to then retailers is what you've been able to build as a design place, as placemaking, as you said, it's a draw for all these people to come in. It's a draw for people to want to live there. It's a draw for people that want to have restaurants there. And then it just draws more, and it's fantastic. Just can't find parking anymore, but it's fantastic.
Yeah, being able to park. I mean, that is Yeah, I mean that is a big piece. And you got to design it and strategize it with balance because you also have people living there, officing there. So you can't throw rock concerts with alcohol. This isn't a Live Nation concert venue out in front of, but it's a beautifully done green space with splash pads for kids, and it's 9 acres of beautiful, thoughtfully designed placemaking. And how we activate that placemaking also has to have a sense of balance for the neighborhood on site and the neighborhood at large. So it's that balancing act between keeping your retailer successful and creating a destination, which the Wharf clearly is. I mean, I've been to Capital One Center. It's also a pretty cool, DC project out there. There's the Wharf in Boston. There's Hudson Yards. I mean, some of these that you can go on and name, certain things that have become a destination for people to go that still allow people to live in office there without, this constant interruption. In fact, the blending of the right placemaking helps reinforce what the office and the multifamily, and if there are other components, like even a hotel, how do I get the retailers involved in all of that? Because that's the other thing is if when I can cross pollinate between retail, office, and multi, it's a huge. It's not linear anymore. It creates hyperbolic success because now you've got everybody kind of working and playing together on site, and you got the community at large coming too. So it's a beautiful thing when that happens. That's the magic in the mix.
Yeah, I know that a lot of these mixed-use developments, sometimes they kind of come under fire by being, kind of maybe corporate and soulless. But I know that a lot of them have done a really, good job, but also, a very conscious effort to bring in local retailers, right? Bring in maybe stuff that, kind of ingratiates yourself to the community. Sean, can you maybe give me some examples of how that happens and does it really work, right? Is it important to bring in a local component, or does it move the needle?
Uh, from my perspective, at least the ones I've been involved with, every successful retail mix or F&B, so bringing in a local chef like Brad Kilgore here in Miami, or bringing in a national like a guy like Thomas Keller. He's got Bouchon right down the street, but right here we've got a restaurant called Miko, which is wildly successful by a local a guy here. There's 3 or 4 chefs that are James Beard award-winning chefs here in Miami. That when you're trying to curate the proper neighborhood merchandising and retail merchandising for you have to look at what does the neighborhood at large have, but what don't they have, and where are those local, widely successful, local concepts that I can bring to partner and marry with, maybe a national brand or a national chef on the F&B side or the entertainment side. So all of those things are important. I think an eye toward the local and championing the local chef or the local store that everybody loves. I think that helps add an element of that when we've been calling it Haniel said it's my neighborhood because this is where I shop and I know that brand because I'm a South Floridian or a Southern Californian, and that's a brand associated with that I know. I think bringing those types of elements into the mix of retailers and being able to capitalize on the hometown boys or girls, if you will, is a huge element of what every mixed use attempts to do.
Mm-hmm. I want to stick on retail for just one more question, because obviously they don't, you don't badge in and out of a retail establishment, so they maybe don't have the same kind of access control needs, but they certainly still have pretty high security needs, and also probably more data needs than in any other tenant, right? They do really want to know that about, like you say, dwell time and where people came from and the demographic and psychographic of the people and when they came. So Haniel, I'd like to maybe hear from you of just some of the ways that retail can be assisted with obviously merchandise protection and security, but also kind of a better understanding of what's happening in their stores.
Yeah, so video systems have gotten really sophisticated over the last couple of years. So there were points in time before that the camera was there to make sure that you can look through it and have recordings of it. And
Retroactive,
that's
yeah.
true. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of what's possible anymore. So when you start to layer in machine learning or AI and analytics on top of the camera, you can see where people are, what they're doing, how long they stand, how many people are going in and out. All those all of those inputs would help our retailers merchandise better to understand what are they designing for, where do the displays go, how much merchandise is moving, how do you operate it more efficiently? Are we stocking out on different things prematurely? There's so many different things that now are possible with these analytics. And so you start to find that, again, a basic video camera system might have been a dumb, say, surveillance camera system at one point. It has gotten smarter to be a security device in different ways. So you can highlight people who are crossing lines, like, going into the back of the room or back of the store before they, when they shouldn't be, those kinds of it's very simple analytics, to the security around tracking people. If you identified somebody who might be a bad actor and you want to find where they are through the store or across the complex, that's possible now from a security standpoint. But then using analytics more in a strategy sense, an operational sense, to figure out how you design your store, how you lay out your merchandise, what things are stocking out, how do you improve efficiencies, all that is possible too. And so this is now, I think this is still tip of the iceberg for what AI can do, but I think that there's a lot in the future for what video camera systems will be about.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at computer vision and just how smart it can be, right? That something that even someone watching the feed the entire time wouldn't pick up on, right? Like, oh, people kind of get caught in this place, or like it's just so amazing how smart these are starting to get.
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing just on the security side is, to us, it's not just the analytic of it. Of course, the machine will watch and finds things that the human eye can't, but it's the complement between what happens, somebody, the sophisticated camera finding something to then be able to get it to somebody who's local, to dispatch somebody to get to a place when they need to get to there. There's some certain digital and physical interactions that's required. You can't just do it all in the cloud and have that be okay and that be it. But there has to be some connection point, because things still happen in reality, or things still happen in physical spaces.
Yeah, that's in the property management world. What Neil just described is giving us real-time actionable intel for things like having a security guard dispatched by something that a camera informs them that just happened, or a tenant immediately having a complaint about something and it getting through either a work order system or some sort of other technology that we have. That real-time actionable intel is the difference between anticipatory service and the way that we want to deliver the elevated level of experience and service here, whether it's security or whatever that service is, that we all the points of service. I mean, it's like when you walk through a hotel, you want the housekeeping and you want everything to be, the food and beverage experience. You want even the elevator, the parking, all of that stuff. The more actionable intel you can get along the user and the end user path of travel to inform you and make it a call to action when it happens, makes us so much more deadly, and gives us the ability to manage at a level that exceeds most people's expectations. But without that, it's a look back, and sometimes it's too late in the look back. It's we have informed. We used to have this thing, the Kingsley survey, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it was a moment in time, look back, and I'd much rather have on the week or on the event actionable intel coming back to me. If it was someone, it was a work order, did the guy adjust the heat and cooling in your space properly? When I get that immediately, I can use that intel to take action. And now all of a sudden, it's the difference between an unhappy tenant customer and someone who just stews on it for a while, and then they blast you in a once in a moment survey at the end of the year. So what Hanel said is gold too, because that has changed our world.
Yeah, we do this thing in DC as a private-public partnership with the MPD, the Metropolitan Police in DC. We call it Capital Shield, but basically all of our clients and others can enroll their camera systems into a big network. So if MPD needed contextual understanding or situational awareness, is the security application of exactly what Sean said, you kind of need to know before you go into a situation what is happening, or you can go and pull streams of video from something forensically to go and figure something out. But the idea that you want to really get a sense of what's happening on the ground so that you can go into it fully informed and not just show up, right? How do you think about that from a security standpoint? How do you think about that from an operational improvement standpoint? How do you think about it in general for all the different things? Just technology is getting so much smarter right now. And then just now thinking about different use cases for it and how that might be applied in things that we're wrestling with day in, just day out, but we used to think about it in a much more manual way. It's just a creativity limiting thing that we just have to expand our minds and expand our horizons to go sort those things out.
That's
I mean,
fascinating.
sorry.
Obviously, DC has some, security, heightened security aspect of it. But do you see that maybe being kind of a thing of the future for other cities to adopt these kind of similar?
Yeah, there are different programs like that around the country for sure, and we try to form partnerships wherever we can because we, as a company, as Castle, we certainly are a for-profit company and all that stuff, but we want to think about how we might serve the community differently or better. And so, to whatever degree that we can contribute the technology we have, the capabilities and services that we have to a broader public good. I mean, security and safety have such importance in who we are and what we do every day. And we sometimes take it for granted, which we shouldn't. There are really scary things that go on out there in the world. So if there's things that we can do to help, we think a lot about that actually, and we have a lot of conversations about them in the company.
Well, we can transition into office. We've hit on this quite a bit, so don't have to spend too much time on it. But I just kind of wanted to get this idea of how you can provide this, the office that occupiers really want right now, right? Which is ones that people want to come to, ones that support collaboration and creativity and all of the things that now that we're not just looking for productivity out of offices. I think more and more I hear that they want them to be places where you build culture and employees can come and speak to each other. And so from what you guys have seen, how are these offices being designed to really appeal to the new needs of corporate occupiers? John, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the pandemic opened a lot of eyes. I mean, I've been working in this industry for almost 30 years, and I was in San Francisco at the time at the Transamerica Pyramid Building when the pandemic hit. And I realized for the first time in a long time in my career, I didn't know what I was doing. How do I open and operate a building during a pandemic? I had to write reopening procedures, and I called a lot of people, all the thought leaders and subject matter experts I know, like Anil, and I said, how do I do this? And I ended up with, because remember, everybody was coming back in 3 months. It wasn't going to be this year-long thing where you have a barometer now that tells you who's returned to office. RTO is this big thing. We got mountains of reports at JLL and research on how to do this. But I think what it also did is it changed the mindset of the occupier too, and the architectural firms and the MEP engineering firms, everybody who was pouring into the design of an office space. Let's for right now we'll keep it to just office space, but how do we create this thing that it became a little more ubiquitous during, but it was before, this happened before too. This isn't the first time. I mean, the WeWork, kind of thing, that dynamic was well before the pandemic, but how do we create dynamic occupancy planning around the use of our space that allows us to maybe have somebody reserve a desk and hotel a desk, because we don't want everybody maybe in this office. We've proved that some functions in our world can probably be done from a few days at home. And I'm not a pro office person. I mean, I worked every day because my home would drive me nuts during the pandemic. I got one of those essential employee things, and I walked down the hill to my office. But what that experience taught me was, hey, there's a different way to do this, and I need to think about operating the building differently. But what it also did was all the other professionals out there that are in that space, that design space, that manage space, that occupy space, it also informed them that, hey, maybe I should be thinking about my design different here a little bit. Does the building owner now build more facilities that allow for conferencing outside of that space so the footprint is smaller? And then you just kind of pass that cost through somehow so you're not losing the economic benefit. But it made people think a lot differently about, from cradle to grave, if I'm designing space to occupying space, what needs to change along the path travel to give me the flexibility to, if another pandemic happened, I can still operate. So I don't want to say it was this wholesale change in the way people office, but it definitely changed office, both from a design and a management standpoint.
And Daniel, I know you guys are employed by many corporate occupiers. Yeah, what are they asking for? What are kind of the new design aspects of the office that you think are super important right now?
Yeah, I think for us, for our clients, maybe two questions that have come up as I just think about this. there's a first question like, whose job is it to bring somebody back to the office? And so there's a debate, like, is it the building's job to attract people to come in back to this flight to quality thing? Are they building the right amenities or the right design to get people to be excited to come in? Or is it the tenant's job or the employer's job to get people to come to the office? And so there's some debate on that. But I do think that there is an important role that the building has to create an environment such that people want to be there. And there was like a couple of years ago, probably a lot more discussion around it's got to be better than home, because if it's better than home, people will come in. I might debate that a little bit. I debated it back then when I said, there's a reason why people are doing certain kinds of work at home. There's certain reasons why certain people are doing certain kinds of things at work. So you're not going to necessarily compete because you're competing on two different playing fields. But that said, you still want a space or an environment that's designed for people to go, yeah, I really feel like I'm comfortable or I'm excited to go into work every day, which I think is part of the flight to quality and what it is. Now, the second question that shows up after people put all these designs in or all these different amenities in is, well, so what? Did that work? And so I remember the number of golf bays that went up or whatever right after 2020. And I don't know if people are playing golf more or less or whatever. Are people coming in to play golf? Or are they going to work just so that they can hit the golf bay? I'm not sure that happened, but that's where, back to the data conversation, you want to be able to track it all. So are you using your access data, let's say, to get somebody to be able to sign up for something, or you're using video data to see that somebody is there? Like, all of that information is available to you so that you're optimizing your design. And as much as everybody knows and appreciates that it needs to be better, but that is not exactly, you're not exactly sure what that means. And so the best form of that is it being used? And is it working? And is
Yeah,
people
that's shared
finding it appealing?
responsibility.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
That
Absolutely.
shared responsibility to get people to come back to office. It's not just the employer, it's also the landlord. And, Anil made a great point. I mean, there was a study done by, I think, Rise, which is a prop tech app, and Prashant Kale, who was one of the CEOs of that company, made a comment one time. He's like, where people are designing these golf bays in there, and then we did the data research. Only 7% of the people in that office people even play golf. So they spent, I don't know how much money putting in this virtual golf bay that, the juice just simply wasn't worth the squeeze when they ended up looking at who was using it. Because, like we talked earlier, this informs every push of a button, every book of a conference room, every event attended that you can capture that data. Those are things that those back end data analytics now inform the decision making around design, around placemaking, around everything to help employers get them back to work. It can't just be a mandate. A mandate implies that it's almost like punishment. No, we wanted people to come back to our office buildings and say, hey, this is a great place to office. I could do this at home, but I'd much rather be here, because we do feel like there's still some major power around collaboration and about being in the same physical space. But you got to make those spaces. We have the term, I've used it before, and I'm almost embarrassed here, commute worthy. I'll air quote it, because if you don't make it commute worthy, to Hanil's point, it's like, why, if I could do the work here, why would I go into the office? Why is my employer making me do this? We want them to get here and make it easier for them. Create, he used the term frictionless environment, which I love. Create that frictionless environment for them first, and then create something special once they get here.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time that we write about the kind of, the new office needs, a return to the office, that what always strikes me is, how varied they are. It's really, really hard to paint with a broad brush. Like, what industry are you in? What is your corporate culture? Who are your employees? Right. I think every corporation has the task now of understanding what their, employees want from the office. And it's not easy, right? What would work for one office wouldn't work next door. And so I think there's a lot more needs of that, of knowing exactly what people want and what people use. So
Yeah, I mean, one last thought from me, just as we think about this, we think the hybrid work model is here to stay, at least for some period of time. So when you track our back to work barometer, Tuesday, Wednesdays really spike, Mondays and Fridays are very low. And so that's what averages out to be the 50 or 60% number. You've got some 60s and 70s numbers on the peak days. But when you're starting to design an office environment so that you take that into consideration, what do you do different? What do you do different so that that Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, from a space design standpoint, from a programming standpoint, from, like you said, hoteling before, Sean, like, it spikes on certain days. So what do you do to accommodate that spike? what do you do to design it so that your programming reflects the numbers of people who are going to be there? How do you staff up for it? How do you think about Mondays and Fridays differently? All of that ends up being operationally and physically embedded in the design that a couple of years ago we wouldn't have thought about. And so that's going to be
Every,
foremost.
yeah, every occupancy profile, day to day, season to season, looks different, to Neil's point. So you need to, take that and be informed by that and say, what do I need to, what do I need to be doing differently on maybe those days that I don't do on other days? And, in mixed use environments, especially some of these ones with, a sports adjacency and events going on, no one day on the project looks the same as the other. That Monday that you had last week ain't the Monday you're going to have this week. So being informed, and there are two reports I look at from a return to office standpoint. The barometer, which I've been looking at for a year now, or ever since it started coming out. I was amazed that there was even something out there. But a shout out to our research department. They have an RTO research report, which does inform us around, makes me a little smarter around, well, what are corporate headquartered people doing? What are big law firms doing? There's all kinds of information within those reports that show the behaviors and patterns of what people are doing around return to office across industry and sector. And that is really between that and the barometer that Castle puts out. I feel like I've been pretty well informed along the time from when the pandemic started to ended to today.
Yeah, but JL research is amazing. Props to you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, with the couple minutes we have left, I think I just wanted to make sure we touch on one of the unique aspects of these mixed use developments, which is that they often have kind of district level building systems, right? They can be designed and connected in a way where, when it comes to energy management, when it comes to data collection, right, everything can happen through the entire development. So maybe I'd like to hear from both of you about, maybe a tip to make sure you're getting the most out of this, not only the data, but like the ability to save energy, lower carbon footprint, all of those things. Haniel, I'd love to start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think we talked about a lot of the data parts of it. I think it's the implications of what you do about it. So are you matching your resources, whether they are your system like HVAC resources or even people resources, to align to where there is activity and when there is activity? That's really important. But it also now has allowed people to think differently about how to deploy their people. So I can have maintenance teams or property management teams that serve across multiple communities based off of where I know it's dynamically happening. And then I can get both input requests differently dynamically and digitally, but I can also get people to be able to use access control, let's say, to open doors at certain periods of time because they can get into one community and then from a security standpoint, block them off so they can't get back into a different space. But that now is resource informed, data informed resource deployment, resource allocation. That's very different. And it'll create opportunities, I think, for you to save money and think differently about just generally investments.
The resource of labor is, I think, often forgot, right? Which can easily be scaled up and down based on the data. All right, Sean, take us home.
Yeah, so everything that Haniel just said, I totally, he and I are both working on a 100-acre hyperbole mixed-use district in Orange County, California right now. And they're building, they got 4-acre parks, they got entertainment, they've got their sports adjacent there. So with that type of build on 100 acres within a city, even here in Coral Gables, there's a separate responsibility that people look to you to exercise. When you're doing that, how do you, with all of this scale and mass, how do you save energy? How do you deploy resources? And there's economies to be gained across that because these things are big. I mean, I think of things like the OC Vibe is the name of this one, but Tampa Water Street or some of these things that are, they're urban renaissances of some places, and suburban renaissances of some places. And you control a lot of the factors of production, within that district, which gives you the ability to then, on a scaled model, find efficiencies and cost savings and create a scenario for energy management that reduces, getting sustainable solutions. Like, I'm not the lead, sustainability guy, but even I recognize that with the scale comes opportunity. And I think that's what we try as JLL to explain to our, to our clients is you have all this. How do we bring solutions that help you maximize scale to get to those opportunities, whether they're cost savings, cost avoidance, or monetization strategies that wouldn't otherwise avail themselves because you are controlling a huge, piece of land with a lot of stuff on it. A lot of brick and mortar is being built on this, which gives you the opportunities to get, the cost savings and higher premiums.
Absolutely. Well, great. This is a great place to stop. I appreciate both of you so much. If anybody watching would like to be put in contact with Haniel or Sean, please reach out to me. It's franco@propmoto.com. That's FRANCO@propmoto.com. Sean, Haniel, thank you guys so much for joining.
Franco, thank you so much. Haniel, it's been